Toronto's historic distillery district. We're at the Mill Street Brewpub. This is Toronto's newest brewery. It was opened in 2002. It's doing very well. It's won tons of awards. And we're just going to go in and meet Joel Manning, the brewmaster. He's going to talk to us a little bit about brewing and about the different beers that are available in the store. So here we are inside the brew house at Mill Street Brewery with the brewmaster, Joel Manning. How are you doing?
Good. How are you? Welcome to Mill Street Brewery.
Thank you.
Today we're brewing Pilsner, which is one of our specialty beers that we make down here at the pub. And it's a style of lager beer, and it's made with all pale malt. So we're standing right now right in front of the mash tun, where we've taken about 400 kilos of pale malt. We've ground it up in a malt mill that we have, and then we've delivered it to the mash tun where we mix it with water. It's basically beer. What we're doing is the very, very, very first step of making beer, making a mash. Basically, beer in its sort of simplest form is an alcoholic beverage. It's fermented. It's flavored with hops. It's made from malt. Okay, so that's all you got to remember. It's an alcoholic beverage made with malt, flavored with hops. The sugar, any alcoholic beverage is made from feeding sugar to yeast.
Right.
Okay, and just a question of what the source of sugar is determines what type of alcohol it is. If it's grape juice, it's wine. If it's apple juice, it's cider. If it's pear juice, it's perry. If it's honey, it's mead. If it's cane sugar, it eventually can become rum if you distill it. It's all they're all based on. So you can
pretty much ferment anything? Is that what you're saying?
Yes, absolutely. Humankind realized a long time ago that if you have sugar, you can make booze, and you can either eat it or you can make alcohol out of it. So basically, beer and grain spirits are very, very closely related because beer and grain spirits are both made with grain that's been malted. I'll explain malting in a little bit, but it's grain that's been malted that is then turned to sugar. Sugar is extracted, it's fed to yeast, and then it's fermented to alcohol. And then you either drink it as it is, as beer, or you can distill that and make whiskey out of it, you can make vodka out of it, you can make gin out of it, you can make all the grain spirits out of it. So,
and that's not what you're doing right here?
That's not at all what we're doing
just
now, but
beer.
It's interesting that Mill Street has kind of grown up in the distillery district here in Toronto, in the old Goodman-Wurst thing. It is actually kind of funny because they are really kind of almost fraternal trades historically, that breweries and distilleries really kind of coexisted. Distilleries hire a lot of brewers. I belong to a bunch of technical trade associations that are made up of both brewers and distillers. They have a lot in common, just in that they are usually grain fermenters.
Is it true that you have to brew to brew something before you can distill it?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah,
absolutely. Yeah, distillers will make something that they call wash, which is basically a mash that is fermented, and then they take that wash, this sort of 10% alcohol beer, really rough beer, and then put it into their stills, and then distill off the alcohol and recondense it and make grain spirit out of it. We don't do that.
There wouldn't be any hops in there, though, right?
No, there wouldn't be any hops. That's a very, very important distinction. Beer, like I said, is flavored with hops, and that's, again, I'll talk about hops in a second, but yeah, they're a spice that's used to flavor beer, and they are very, very distinctive to beer.
So you can't distill your tank house?
You could.
You could?
You could, and it has happened, but not commercially. We do distillations, and brewers do distillations in labs to do alcohol determinations. That's a real old-school, traditional way of doing it. You weigh a sample, you distill off the alcohol, you weigh it again, and what's missing is the alcohol. You can actually calculate the alcohol content that way. So you can do it in the lab. We don't distill tank house, though. Basically, what malt is are germinated plant seeds. Barley, wheat, rye, any cereal grain are actually species of grass. And the cereal, the grain itself, is actually the plant seed. Obviously, it's grass seed. They look like little fat grass seeds that you throw on your lawn in the front of your house. We'll grab some of them and take a look at them. What happens during malting, and the reason why there's starch inside cereal grain, the whole reason why there's starch there, you can grind up and you can make pasta, and you grind it up and you make flour, you can make bread out of it, you can make whatever you want and eat it. The whole reason why that starch is there is it is a food source for the embryonic plant. The baby plant that's inside that seed waiting to grow needs an energy source in order to be able to get big enough to get its leaves clear of the soil and start photosynthesizing. Okay, it makes sense. Now the mechanism for doing that is that the plant itself is capable of breaking that starch down into sugar. The starch is a storage form. Starch is quite stable, and the way starch is complexed inside of a seed like this, inside, say, barley, is quite complicated. It's hard to get it wet. If it's lying around on the ground in the prairies all winter, it's freezing cold, it's wet, it's damp, it is protecting its food source, and it's structured so that that starch can't get wet.
Right.
What malting does, in the spring, for example, the plant will start growing. It'll warm up, it'll hit a certain critical temperature, a certain critical moisture level, and it will start growing on its own. What maltsters do, maltsters are people that make malt. It's also a great name for a ska band, and no one's used it yet. Maltsters will take raw barley or raw wheat, and they will germinate it. They will bring it up into ideal conditions where the stuff can sprout.
So you don't do that here at the
brewery?
brewery?
We don't do that, no. It's a really good question. A lot of people wonder whether we do. And some old breweries still do. Some very, very large vertically integrated breweries still do. But we don't.
In Canada, or?
In Canada, no. I don't know any
No way.
any companies here that do their own maltings. It's been really a separate field for about 100 years now, malting and brewing. They're two different things. But what the maltsters do is trick the plant into thinking it's a good time to grow. So it will start to grow. It will pop roots at one end. The little baby plant will start growing down the length of the inside of the seed. But most importantly, the plant will produce all these enzymes that are used to liberate the starch, like basically give the plant access to the starch, and also then break it down into sugar. They produce all the enzymes naturally that are just about to attack the starch and turn into sugar, and then they stop it. And they stop it by drying it out and killing it and reducing the moisture content, and then they sell it to brewers or distillers.
Excellent.
And so malt is just like barley, except it has been processed naturally in order to have this potential to make a lot of sugar. Okay.
So it's semi-sprouted.
It's sort of, yes, exactly. The brewers call that, maltsters call that modified. That's a very, very good way of looking at it. It is partly sprouted, and the degree of sprouting is what maltsters refer to as the degree of modification. That's a great way of looking at it. And how thoroughly it is modified, or how capable it is of making sugar, directly determines how good it is from a processing point of view when brewers look at it and distillers look at it. This one is caramel malt, which is much more sort of caramelly. Literally, it tastes almost like Ovaltine, or tastes like really sweet breakfast cereal.
Well, that's nice.
Yep. It's also really hard. It's really almost like glass.
It's crunchy.
And the reason why is because the sugars are actually in this one, in caramel malts, they also call them crystal malt. The sugars have actually already been made by the maltsters. The maltsters will keep the malt wet, and they will heat it up to the point where the starches convert to sugars. And then they roast it, and so they caramelize that sugar that's in there, which is also why it's really crunchy.
I think I'm going to have another little bit of that.
Yeah, that stuff's good.
It's yummy.